Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by outsourcing around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. So when you buy from American Giant, you're taking a stand for hardworking people, local communities, and quality clothes. American Giant directly supports American manufacturers and ensures you aren't footing that tariff bill. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Good morning, police, fire, military, and families, and to everybody listening in on the Tactical Living podcast. Good morning, good morning. So today we're going to do a giveaway. I'm going to give away my pillow. It's so funny because I just ordered one of these for my husband, and I started to think about the fact that like most people would like a pillow like this. So whoever comments the most within 24 hours, I am going to send that to you. Go ahead and comment here, comment on our promo thread. If you have any questions during the interview, make sure that you drop them down below. Today's guest, I'm super excited to talk to because she has so much information that I think is valuable to a lot of us, but first responders in particular. She was an NCAA cheerleader. You've been a runner, and you got to a place in your life to where you thought you were doing things right, and then you realized that maybe you weren't. So kind of share a little bit about your story with us, Allison.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm so excited. And you're right. This is completely relevant to first responders. And in general, I think awareness on a lot of these topics isn't prominent enough relative to how many people are experiencing similar things. But a little bit about my journey. I was an NCAA cheerleader after I graduated, got really into running. I was kind of slowly building. So I ended up running half marathons and then full marathons, very involved in the running community. And during this same era, I actually started experiencing really irregular menstrual cycles. And then my period went missing altogether. And during that time, I was really dedicated to my health. So if anything, I was very confused when I go to healthcare providers and try to get more information about what was going on. They're essentially just saying we could put you on the pill, but otherwise it's really not that big of an issue. And because you're doing a lot of endurance training, this is actually pretty normal and common amongst female athletes. And what I didn't realize was that it was caused by lifestyle factors. And when I learned more and more about what was happening in the condition I was experiencing, there are actually a lot of other health implications. And I was missing a lot of these other yellow and red flags that were going off during that period of time in my life. And it was absolutely impacting my performance, not just in fitness, but also in my cognitive experiences, in my mental health. And so it was something that I ended up learning a lot more about, and then eventually, mentoring and coaching other people that are experiencing this, because it is based on nutrition and mismanagement of training and how we're managing stress. And then eventually partnering up with a team of multidisciplinary clinicians, and then putting together a program that really helps others prevent and recover from this type of issue as well, which we can go into a lot more but I just wanted to give a high level of how that kind of relates to my story.
I was listening to somebody else interview you, and you said something so profound, and it was that a lot of people confuse fitness with health. And I'm like, wow, like that is so true. So explain what you meant by that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's really interesting was in this healthy era where I was presumably like optimizing my health. I thought I was listening to all the right advice. I was taking no days off. I thought discipline meant you're exercising every single day, no matter what. And you're pretty consistent with how you're fueling. You're eating really clean. You're following all the random diet advice that you see online. And I was often trying to address this issue of feeling like I was stagnating in my performance by doing more. Because I feel like in the fitness culture, especially, and in the fitness spaces, and especially with folks that are really disciplined, we equate doing more with producing better outcomes. And so having more control, having more output, and that is what healthy looks like, because that's in fitness spaces what discipline and no days off is really praised. And in my case, it was leading me to a state where I was absolutely under recovered. So I was not allowing for appropriate levels of recovery. And by doing more, I was actually putting myself further in a situation where I was putting my health at risk. And I think that that's something that's interesting because when we zoom out, health is something that's so much more comprehensive. So I was so stressed out by my routine. I felt like it was really rigid. I was honestly like even the physiological state I was in, which was this low energy availability state, was actually contributing to my anxiety, contributing my stress levels, my exhaustion. And so when we think about health a lot more holistically, we think about sleep, we think about mental health, we think about your stress levels, we think about, you know, how you're feeling and connections to other people. And I think that I had gotten stuck in this silo where I was thinking about it so much in terms of what we eat and how we're exercising, that it was actually negatively impacting all of these other areas of my life because I thought that that was necessary for my own health.
Yeah, and I also heard you talk about the guilt that came into play when maybe you weren't on par with your diet, or you were deciding to just skip that workout. And I think that happens for so many people. And I'm wondering, what do you think are some of the warning signs that first responders or just any of us can look out for when it comes to maybe, overtraining or even underfueling?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I think there are usually, I like to break it up into like the physiological signs that we're probably either normalizing or we're just pushing through because we don't feel like they're severe enough to do anything. And there's also the behavioral signs, which you started to allude to. But some of the more like physiological signs could be, of course, like if there's any sort of menstrual abnormalities, especially in menstruating people, like if there's irregular periods, missing periods, that's a very like kind of yellow to red flag in more severe cases. But more subtle signs could be if your sleep is being disturbed, if you're having a lot of digestive issues, if you're feeling cold really easily, if you're feeling like you're irritable, so your mood can be very impacted, or low mood, low energy, exhaustion. It can even have impacts in terms of our libido and our frequent injuries. So injury is something that we're more at risk of. And so if we see that we're getting more frequent injuries, or we're getting injured in a way that's like, especially bone stress injuries, that is definitely a leading indicator as well. But there are also a lot of behavioral signs. And this is what I think you touched on really well, which was, and for me, I was absolutely experiencing a lot of guilt and restlessness. So if I tried to take a rest day, it'd be like very anxiety inducing. I'd feel like I wasn't being productive enough, or I was being lazy, and it would cause me to feel like I needed to be doing something that whole day in order to compensate. And so I think that that type of mentality is also a sign that something could be off in terms of how much you're training. And then similarly with food. So if going out of your comfort zone in terms of what you're eating, or feeling like you have uncertainty and you have a hard time being spontaneous, all of those behaviors around food and how you're relating to food or how you're relating to exercise. And I think that oftentimes we can relate or we can at least like reflect on our own essentially like routine when it comes to our fitness and when it comes to our nutrition, and think about, is this a routine that feels flexible? Does it feel energizing? Does it feel really sustainable? Or is it something that feels rigid? Or is it something that feels exhausting to me? And absolutely, in my own experience, I had felt like I didn't have another choice, but I absolutely reflected and was like, it feels like this is pretty rigid. And there were things I wish I could do easily, like take a rest day and just sleep in and enjoy, you know, a pastry spontaneously with people. That there were experiences that I wish that I could have more easily. And so I think that oftentimes we have more awareness than we give ourselves credit for, but sometimes it can feel like we don't have another choice.
Yeah. And listening to you speak, you seem so similar to me in that you like kept stacking things. And we become conditioned to that stack. And then it's not until you have too much that you're holding that you realize that things are a little bit too heavy. And something that you said was that you got to the point to where you would go in, you would work out, and it would be like, that was the one thing that you did today. And then you would feel like you could just sleep and crash and burn for the rest of the day. And I have totally been there. So for anybody who is listening, who might be in that negative spiral, what are some ways out of it?
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I thought was normal. I thought it was normal to like just go really hard in a workout maybe and then feel like exhausted afterwards. And I didn't realize that that was a sign that my body wasn't recovering effectively. And when your body's not recovering effectively, of course, your performance, I mean, the natural response of being in this kind of state is that your performance is impacted. You're not able to repair, recover, build lean muscle in any way that you would be able to do if you were at that full potential, full caliber. So with that said, in terms of like what to do if we're in this state, I have found that one of the things I like to bring it back to is that our bodies don't treat these things in a silo, even if the healthcare system does. And so in my experience, I was really frustrated because I would go to one specialist and then they would try to focus in on one area. And it was almost too pointed of a solution to actually provide the meaningful change that I needed to have. And an example of this would be like, I would go to a PT and then the PT would help me with an injury I was experiencing. And then once the injury was resolved, I would go back to the same habits that I was having before. Or I would go to work with someone on nutrition and they give me a meal plan and I try to follow it more or less. And then sometimes I would and sometimes I wouldn't. But of course, my training load would change. And I think that especially for first responders, it's really easy to underestimate how much output we have. Let's say that we're doing structured exercise and then we're not necessarily potentially accounting for how much output we have throughout the day, just in navigating the random things that come up, being on our feet, and all of that our body is still experiencing as output, even if we're not categorizing that as structured exercise. And that can contribute to how we should be thinking about our nutrition, how we should be thinking about our energy availability. And so the thing that I find is to be the most effective is start with the lifestyle factors. There are lifestyle factors in terms of what you can do in terms of changing your habits with exercise, with nutrition, that can start to rebalance that energy availability, which can help start to re-regulate your moods and get you out of this kind of cycle that you'll be in where you are experiencing low mood, you're experiencing stress, anxiety, and that's actually probably contributing to keeping you stuck in that rigidity. Then I think it's really valuable, and studies have even shown that there's a lot of efficacy in also working on the psychological, mental, mindset components that are keeping you stuck, keeping it really hard to make changes or navigate out of that comfort zone. And sometimes the impetus for starting to work on some of those mindset pieces is to start by realizing what lifestyle factors you're potentially mismanaging. An example of this could be thinking about, instead of just how much I'm eating in the entire day, being a little bit more strategic. What is the timing of your meals? And are you actually structuring in deload? That could be lower intensity days. It could be full rest days. It could be every few weeks. You're periodizing your workouts. And there are frameworks that can help build in structured recovery while you're in this state to break the cycle. Or maybe if you feel like you're overtrained in a more severe state, you might just challenge yourself to take a few days, maybe a week, a period of time off to let your body kind of come down and repair that energy availability a little bit easier. And I think that doing that type of exercise is going to feel really mentally challenging. And this is where working with someone can be really valuable. But it's going to bring out some of those demons that we actually kind of want to bring up so that we can confront them head on. Because otherwise, they're going to maintain so much control over the behaviors that we're going to continue to be stuck in again and again and again. And it won't feel sustainable because it's actually going to, as we were saying, this is actually impacting longevity. It's going to impact your bone health. It can impact your cardiovascular health in the longer run. And so there are health reasons, both in the present term for performance and also in the longer term for longevity, to actually try to break out of some of these habits that may no longer be serving you.
Yeah, and I know for my body, metabolically, it loves that. And Michael says here, I used to do high intensity training 7 days a week. If I missed a day, I was listening to the whole day. Now I train 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I casually walk neighborhoods on the weekends. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about what happens to us during that recovery phase, both physically and mentally, versus when we don't give ourselves that.
Yeah. So I will say that, like, when we are just getting, because there's sort of like when we're in steady state, kind of like what Michael is saying, like, oh, now I am actually allowing myself appropriate levels of recovery. But then there's also when we're trying to make that transition, maybe from when Michael was doing like the high intensity training every single day, and how do we get out of that? So when we're in that period where we're ramping out of that, we're transitioning out of low energy availability, overtraining, underfueling, and into a state where we're no longer kind of doing that to our bodies. One of the biggest changes that people don't expect that I'll touch on is, to your point on metabolism, our body is going to adjust to what we are giving it. And because our body's essentially in survival mode, it's saying we don't have enough resources to be able to direct the energy that we have towards things that are not core keeping the lights on. And that can include building up muscle. It could include reproductive health, things that we might not view as something that isn't core and essential. And so one of those things is also our metabolism, which is going to adjust to what we're giving it. So as we're in this period where we're recovering, we're trying to restore we're correcting the underfueling, we're correcting the overtraining. One of the things that our metabolism is going to do is going to start to turn back on. And so then one thing that can happen that's really unexpected for folks is that they start to feel really hungry, because sometimes what people will say is, well, I'm listening to my body. I'm eating when I'm hungry, and I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm not hungry at that period of time. But what they're not realizing is actually that is a natural side effect of underfueling. And when we start to fuel appropriately, the hunger cues might turn back on, and that can feel really surprising for folks. And we actually have to play catch up. So in that way, we might be underestimating how much we need to eat in that period, especially just to come out of that state of chronically underfueled or chronically overtrained. And then we eventually, once we're in that steady state and we're getting out of the habitual, like what we're doing in those recovery phases, is essentially we're giving our bodies space and to be able to rebuild muscle, to be able to recover effectively. And that's all allowing us essentially to be able to go into our next session, if you will. Like if we're taking Michael's example, where maybe they're doing high intensity training on Friday, taking 2 days off on the weekend, and then doing high intensity training again on Monday. Then those 2 days off, we're actually giving our body the opportunity to be able to recover from those sessions, and therefore go into Monday feeling a little bit more a little bit more fresh. And so that's kind of the concept. Like conceptually, we can apply that to different blocks of time. We're talking about the weekend. But you can even think about this in terms of there's different ways that we can re-energize, different ways that we can deload. And I usually like to use the example of like a marathon training block, where if you're building up and you're trying to ramp up your mileage to an output you've never hit before, then what you do is every few weeks, you actually do want to pull back, and it gives your body the ability to actually recalibrate, to be able to re-energize. And then you can go back into the training and you'll have more power. You'll have more ability to bring your full self, your energy, more energy. You'll be appropriately recovered in order to go into those sessions again. And I like that analogy because it's a mentality that we can bring in, even if we're not building or training towards some explicit event. If we're doing that regular, group fitness workout, how are we thinking about and being strategic about when we're going really, really high intensity, when we're scaling back? And one other way that we could be doing this is actually diversifying our modalities, where a lot of the times if we're doing the exact same thing every single day, day after day after day after day, and I see a lot of this in terms of folks that are underestimating how common it is to get to a state of overtraining, where they're like, oh, well, I'm not like a marathoner. I'm not doing an Ironman. I'm not an Olympian. They're training way harder. So how could I be overtraining? And the ironic thing is that I actually see it really commonly in folks that are not necessarily at that level, because they're doing it on top of all these other things that they're doing. It's not like they have a huge team around them that is coaching them and helping them with their rehab and their recovery and optimizing every single aspect of their life. And what often then also happens, compounded on that, is like we don't have a lot of time. So it's like, how much intensity can I fit into like the 30 minutes that I have today to work out? And that is the type of mentality and kind of habit formation that can lead us to be in that state of overtraining. And so how we can start to evaluate that and reflect is, even if we are doing the same thing every single day, can we give ourselves the opportunity, if we only have 30 minutes, to do something lower intensity every few days, and just start to notice, if we do it consistently, start to notice over time, am I sleeping better? Is my mood improving? Do I feel like I'm progressing in my output, in my workouts? And these are all indicators that you're starting to come out of that state of being overtrained.
Yeah. There's so much value there. And I know we have to wrap this up soon, but I don't want to forget to ask, because you were in the public square, working as a cheerleader, running, and there are so many people that I know kind of had this mentality, and culturally we have it as a whole that, we have to be tough. We have to push through. There are t-shirts that people are supposed to buy to wear to the gym that say that same thing. So how do you kind of combat what society has conditioned us to believe is true versus what we're feeling or what might exhaust us?
Yeah. No, this is an amazing question, because I'm not going to lie, it's hard. Like, even for me, I feel pretty clear on like what I need to be doing, and I've been doing it for a long time, but you still see people online and question, oh, am I doing the right things? Clearly they're doing something different, because there's so much, it's weird. There's transparency, but also you're not seeing the full story. So it's hard to remind yourself, like, I actually don't know, is this person doing the things that are in the best interest for their health? And is this even applicable to me? Like, is this going to be applicable to my health goals? I would say that the first step to combating that can be the most valuable is investing in what your goals are. And this could be working with someone. It could be experimenting with things on your own in order to develop confidence in the habits and the behaviors that are going to be suited for you. And this is one of the kind of the biggest, I would say, benefits of the folks that I see coming through the program that I'm working with folks in, is that we're giving you confidence that, yes, you're going to see things online that are not the same as what you're necessarily doing. And this is especially true for women, where we don't have, our body is more sensitive to energy availability than what a lot of the dietary advice online is saying. And so I think that it's about understanding and having confidence, and then seeing the results for yourself. And then when you start to see those results for yourself, you start to realize you develop your own philosophy, your own perspective on what is going to work for you and what's in your best interest. And that makes it a lot easier to then question and be like, oh, I'm seeing this thing. I don't really, this person's coming to the gym wearing this shirt that's like, no days off. And I'm like, here I am, took a rest day yesterday. And it gives you a lot more confidence and no, but this is the thing that works for me. And I'm not even going to try to fall into those habits, because I've developed my own confidence in that philosophy and the behaviors and habits that are going to work for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And for anybody listening to this, Allison, that maybe wants to recalibrate things for themselves, whether it's a man or a woman, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that one of the easiest ways is on Instagram. I'm at Allison Yamamoto. So if you ever want to reach out, you can. And there's a link to, a free discovery call essentially. So if you wanted to chat with me, I'm always happy to chat. Or if you want to DM me, I'm love messaging with folks there. And then also the website is at theallymethod.com. So it's the ally, ALLY method.com. And we have a bunch of free resources there. Again, you can apply for the program. And if anyone is interested, I'd always love to chat.
Yeah, cool. I love it when people come in and they're super vulnerable and sharing all of the mishaps that they've gone through to kind of speed things up for other people who might otherwise take a really long time in order to figure it out. So thank you so much for coming on to our show. And if you guys have any more questions, make sure to drop them down below.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everyone.
This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest. Loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them. And guess what? That's normal. Regain, powered by BetterHelp, offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd tried couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Welcome to Finally Caught, a true crime podcast from the hit North American and UK television series.
I saw the one girl with her throat cut and her abdomen stabbed and slashed.
It's a gruesome sight.
Bloodstains on the bed, wall.
This is just the beginning of the journey.
Each episode details a horrific murder and subsequent investigation in order to capture the killer at large. To the newly released first season of Finally Caught, available wherever you get your podcasts.